and it is going to be a very, very fun conversation, a very enlightening conversation, and a much needed conversation. So ladies and gentlemen, before we move into our opening keynote and foundational conversations, I'd now like to formally invite on stage Ms. Helen Sylvester. She's the Regional Director for Asia at the British Council, who will be welcoming and inviting our distinguished guests panels to join us.
Hello. Thank you. Hello, and good afternoon. So welcome to Women of the World and this first and what I know will be a remarkable session. This is a place where ideas, voices, and action will converge, shaping a more inclusive, equitable future. As Regional Director for the British Council for South Asia, I have the immense privilege and enormous pride to lead our teams across South Asia, including Pakistan, supporting our work in arts, English and education, which reaches and changes many millions of lives across the region. The WOW partnership is important for the British Council. From here in Karachi to Kathmandu, we've partnered with the Foundation for 10 years to bring the wonder of WOW right into the heart of our work. We believe in holding space for women and girls to create and collaborate through the arts, helping them to address the challenges they face every day, celebrating both their talent and being clear on the change they want to see. It goes to the core of what the British Council is all about, building understanding and trust between the UK and Pakistan. It is my great pleasure to introduce this session. And before I invite our speakers up to the stage and over to Sidra Iqbal, who will run the rest of the session, I think it's important to say that at the British Council, we believe in inclusion and we believe in equality. In other words, either everyone is included or no one is. Either everyone is equal or none of us are. Easy to say, yes. Hard to achieve? Most definitely. But this lineup today of brilliant women have demonstrated leadership at the highest level of politics, diplomacy, culture, storytelling, and women's rights. Each speaker brings incredible insight into how we amplify voices, challenge norms, and mobilize collective action. So with that, can I please invite to the stage with enormous pleasure Senator Sherry Rehman. Senator Sherry Rehman, thank you. Senator Rahman is a globally recognized political leader, climate advocate, and champion for women's rights. She currently serves as chairperson of Senate and Standing Committee on Climate Change, as well as being vice president and parliamentary leader of the Pakistan People's Party. Senator Rehman has previously been the first female leader of the opposition in Pakistan's Senate, served as Pakistan's ambassador to the United States, and is the founding chair of the Jinnah Institute, a leading non-partisan policy think tank. Her journalism career spans 2 decades, and she has been named among the 100 most influential people by both Time and Forbes, as well as one of the 25 most influential women by the Financial Times. Senator Rehman's work on climate diplomacy and gender equality has shaped global policy dialogue, and her book, Womansplaining, which she's promised to give a copy to me later, amplifies the voices of women leaders across South Asia and beyond. I'd next like to invite Jane Marriott, OBE, CMG. Jane Marriott is a distinguished British diplomat and senior foreign policy leader. Jane has served in critical assignments across geopolitics, including as British Ambassador and High Commissioner, notably becoming the first woman to be appointed High Commissioner to Pakistan. She began her diplomatic career advising key international envoys and has been recognised with both an OBE and a CMG for her contribution to British foreign policy. Her experience spans conflict zones, development cooperation, and high-level international engagement. I'd next like to call up Jude Kelly, CBE, founder of the WOW Foundation. Jude Kelly, CBE, the founder of the global WOW Women of the World movement, an acclaimed theatre director, producer, and cultural leader. Jude served as the artistic director of London's South Bank Centre for over a decade and founded the first WOW Festival in 2010. Under her leadership, WOW expanded globally, celebrating women's achievements and confronting gender injustice in over 30 locations worldwide. And in 2025, she became Master of St. Catherine's College, Oxford. And finally, we welcome Mahnaz Rehman. Women's rights advocate from Pakistan, a long-standing human rights activist whose work has centered on women's empowerment, freedom of expression, and legal reform. With decades of experience at the Aurat Foundation, she has helped advocate for pro-women legislation and played a key role in civil society efforts to advance gender justice. Beyond advocacy, Mahnaz's work spans NGO leadership, media engagement, and grassroots mobilization, a true voice for rights and inclusion in South Asia. Could we have another round of applause for our fantastic panelists, please? And finally, I would like to introduce a face which will be very familiar to you, and our host for this session, Sidra Iqbal. Please, over to you.
Well, thank you, Helen. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Sidra Iqbal here. And wow, Pakistan, what a wow panel. Let's give them a big round of applause. It's truly an honor to be back here. It's a forum for women, by women, and it connects us to the larger community, the larger woven reality of the world. The world changes drastically every year, every minute. So these conversations are going to be engaging and very enlightening. Ladies and gentlemen, in a world where women in power are still asked to soften their truth, our first speaker has shown us what it means to speak it clearly, consistently, and without apology. Please join me in welcoming, at a time when power tests women for their tone more than their truth, our first speaker who has never traded clarity for comfort, Senator Sherry Rahman, for her keynote speech.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, girls, women of the world, friends here, distinguished panel. I'm not taking everyone's name because I forget the last names, except for Jane Marriott, but Helen and Ms. Rahman here, another Rahman. And I was worried about the last name. And Sidra, of course. And here I already begin by making the fundamental mistake that I blame or accuse all my men friends and colleagues of doing, using a woman's first name only. So I did that for Sidra, but I excuse myself by saying that Sidra is a household name now. So that's when you become that famous, Sidra, to use your first name. That's what they told me when they say Sherry, Sherry, Sherry all the time. But hey, women can do that anyway, right? You can say Sherry, I can say Sidra, you can say Leila. But in formal settings, I don't allow or appreciate others doing that. Okay, so we must die. And it happens all the time, believe it or not. Anyhow, so let's get started. First of all, thank you, WOW, and the British Council, and all collaborators here for bringing us all together for the 10th year of this fantastic converging, where we can all share our journeys, our challenges, and perhaps some opportunities. Now I have a raspy throat, so bear with me. It's been a week of too much talking. But I have lots to share, and I don't know sometimes when I'm not thematized or put in a box where to begin. I do though want to begin with one thing, which is I recall this year being 2026, being 30 years of from Beijing, where women all came together from all over the world, women leaders came together for absolutely coming up with the biggest rights articulation in the world. It was like a women's Magna Carta. And what did we decide over there? We decided women's rights are human rights. And then everybody said, well, that's not such a big deal. What is the problem? Well, the problem is that women's rights were not human rights. And the problem remains exactly that today. They are still not human rights because, and then another cascade down the line of problems and barriers. Human rights are also not very often in the front line of rights that need to be given consideration and the due course of the law. Now this is everywhere in the world, and it's happening more so because context matters. It's happening more so because we're living in a world now defined more by conflicts than any time other than the Second World War. Why is that important to women? Because women have agency and power and policy-making prowess for everything, not just women's ideas or women's lives. So if conflicts are raging all over the world, what does that mean for women? Just like climate change, which has become the world's biggest mega existential threat, and you can say that geopolitics is now defined as that, or ungoverned AI is defined as that. But climate change, just like conflict, brings women disproportionately into the front line of all obstacles, barriers, discriminations, and always predations. So, because climate change is something I'm passionate about, and national security long ago used to be my day job, I always see them as interlinked. In any case, I think women have the ability and capacity to link themes and real life. Real life is always interlinked to each other, to changes and phenomena across boundaries. And I think that's what we're here today, this afternoon, to talk about and not just celebrate women, because of course we have a lot to celebrate, we always have had, even in the darkest of times, but also to do a stock take of where we stand as women of the world and also as women of Pakistan. Because we're in Pakistan, I'm very glad this is happening here. And here I just want to point to two things. I don't have unlimited time, which would be very nice, of course. But the two things I see that are really holding us back, the barriers I'm looking at, the trends that are not going north. There are many trends not going north, but to my mind, there are two things that are really backsliding all over the world. Actually, there are three, but it's in Pakistan and the world over that we need to take Celebrations happen every day, and we can continue with them because we are here, after all, aren't we? By women, for women, and about women, aren't we? Women explaining the world to each other and to others, hopefully. So here I see that 30 years after Beijing, there was great hope in the air, and I mention it because when I was there, I had a ringside seat. I went with the iconic Pakistani leader, Benazir Bhutto, Muhtarma Sharif Benazir Bhutto, as we call her out of respect, after her martyrdom facing down terrorists, which incidentally no other man did at that point. I said this in the joint session yesterday, all of you protesting, where were you when terrorism reared its head? There was only that one woman. She said, I'm going to make sure that Pakistan's soil is not invaded by terrorists who are planting the flag of a white flag or a black flag instead of the flag of Pakistan. So she gave her life doing that, and we famously reclaimed the territory lost to a band of militants who always find women's bodies a space to talk about, to invade, to worry about it, to be anxious about it, to adjudicate about it, and imprison about. Always. If you've noticed, it's women's bodies in the front line. What shall we do? Should we wear a headscarf? Should we not? How is that anyone's problem? Except your own, the woman's own problem. So that kind of thing was happening. And I've grown up in a Pakistan where women heroes led the way for justice, for rights, for all sorts of freedom, not just women's rights. And that was the Women Action Forum. There were many other forums, and Ms. Rahman was very much a part of them. I like to say Ms. Rahman because I'm also Rahman. So identifying with others is part of the whole solidarity with sisters thing. And now, I just want to say what are the two things were. I find that the feminization of poverty used to be a big thematic that we would talk about and unbundle. Today I see also added to all of that, at least in the global south, is the feminization of injustice. I see that everywhere in the world. That is the one SDG, rights and violence against women, that is backsliding. It's backsliding globally and it's backsliding everywhere. That is something that we should all be worrying about. There are many other SDGs that are backsliding, but the other one of them related to women globally is maternal mortality. Women are doing badly all over the world and in Pakistan on health issues. And I'm talking about aggregate numbers. On the climate thing, it hasn't made it as it went to the SDG tent yet, but climate and women, we all know how gender is squared at the intersect between devastations and catastrophes and refugee tents or displaced people's tents. Again, that intersects with a woman's experience or a child's experience in a displaced reality. It is egregious, and it is never something that we hear about in the mainstream. It is talked about amongst ourselves. I'm going back to the feminization of injustice. Why do I pick that? 5 years ago, I think it was 2020, when COVID-19 hit us all very badly in the face and nose and throat, I was at my first WOW conference in London. We were all running around with masks and trying very hard for our faces to still be seen, and I was in the front row at the opening when Princess Camilla, who was not then the Queen of the United Kingdom or Great Britain, came onto the stage and very bravely, I thought here was not truth being spoken to power, but power speaking truth, said, well, this is a shocking statistic that 1 out of 3 women in the UK experienced domestic violence. And she unveiled that figure. For me, that was a real shocker. 1 out of 3 women experiencing domestic violence. violence, even in the UK, which was the heart of the democratic enterprise in the world. Well, that I thought was very brave of her, and then she was more courageously went on to call it the silence at the other epidemic. So it's a silent epidemic, but it is the other epidemic. And no one has been able to take it out of ICU, even today. So the United Nations keeps trying, champions of change keep trying, all of us, and have been a part of that story and journey. But I then looked up that data point, and I have been following it since then. It is still, ladies, gentlemen, friends, colleagues in solidarity, it is still very much solidly the same. We talked about, now that's to me the statistic of shame for all of us, for the whole world. And in Pakistan, I'm pretty sure that it is the tip of the iceberg here. Because when you're at the bottom of the social pyramid, in our societies and communities, women are not encouraged to report crimes against them. They are not even sure that an act of violence or aggression against them in the home, including mental torture, is even a crime. They're not sure it's a crime because the communities define crimes for them in the good old solid patriarchal architecture of the 18th century. Not the 7th century, we actually did better than in terms of the trajectory of purpose and intentionality. But here we have that same, and it unites the country. Obviously it's lower, it's higher, the statistics are higher, they're hidden at the bottom of the social pyramid for obvious reasons. I won't digress into that. We all know why. Because it is still considered a matter of honor to abuse or kill or maim a woman and her partner if they have married for or based on their own choice or made their own choices. Which I will talk about in a minute here, but here what we need to think about is why is this not being addressed constantly all over the world? I mean, other than the UN, which does its bit, the UN itself is in a bit of a recession like democracy all over the world. Here, we are looking at a crisis that no one is talking about. So how do you address it? And how does my life and your life intersect with it? My life intersects with it on what I call the domestic violence bill because my day job is to make laws. It has taken 21 years. 21 years to get that law passed yesterday. Thank you. It wasn't me. It took a village and which I call the parliament and many more to get that done. And in that I always want to thank and acknowledge the purpose and support of communities that used to gather around us, and that was mainly the Women's Active Forum, Orient Foundation, NGOs that were very active as civil society in what I used to call the dictatorship years. So those were the terrible ZI years when women could not even make choices about what they wore to office if it was a public office. I remember my mother wearing a sari always to work. She retired as vice president of the state bank, so we do come from a working women family. She had to get rid of, they would not allow that. They said, you have to wear a shalwar kameez to work. And she said, well, maybe I should take a few days leave. And since mother could afford that, we had to live with a situation where she carried on. And today, where do we stand? Yes, we have the right to wear what we want, but people largely feel societies from the top of the elite pyramid, the classes pyramid, the one injustice and discrimination that women endure, often silent, even behind very gilded closed doors, gilded, air-conditioned, the luxury of those closed doors. They endure it in silence. There is a conspiracy in all societies to to not talk about it. Because, oh, we must not bring it to the police. We must not bring it to a place where a reckoning can be made, where perhaps the law of the land can apply. And let me not take the credit here. The law of the land may have been made yesterday, and that only for Islamabad Capital Territory. Since has already got a domestic violence law. But it's not just about laws, because here we found, after a while, which is why I wanted to talk about justice, is that we made the laws. It took what? 9 years to pass the law on women, girls married only after 18. So we have prohibited that since about 10 years ago. But it was a push to make it a national law, and then usually provinces tend to follow, if not out of embarrassment than anything else. And, you know, that took 9 years. And yesterday somebody said in Parliament, I don't accept that. But thank heavens laws are not made on pedagogy or the power of the pulpit. They're made by Parliament, and they have to be followed. And here's where my worry begins, and here's where I would like everyone on the stage, and mostly as well as off it, it's time to think about why laws, especially about women, don't get implemented. Now, that's a boring subject, but I'll give you one headline that bothers me very much, which I saw about 6 months ago, and we've been investigating it and working on it, is that all rapes, out of all the rapes reported, only 5% across the country get the penalties they deserve. The rest are a barrage of acquittals. So the conviction rate is 5% for rape. Oh my God. We should all sit up and think about that. That includes gang rape. So we need to think about that. And then I was able to call together another committee, which I don't chair, but we have committees where we can bring things to, if I raise it on the floor, it goes to the Human Rights Committee. And then we were able to call all the provinces in, their advocates general, in as to why this is happening. And then of course they tell us the prosecution is weak, or the case by the time it reaches the courts, it is so weak that the courts are unable to deliver the verdict that actually justice would smile at. But why is that happening? It's because of the culture of silence around reporting violence or rape. Because the family itself will tell you, we don't need this made a big issue of, please. And then what the victim goes through in the trial and the judicial system, I would urge you all to watch a play called Running on GOTV, or it must have finished by now. I hope it has. I'm waiting for it to finish to resume it. It's called Case Number 9. I would urge all women and men to see that play. It takes you through a journey of what happens to a rape victim, and I haven't seen the last episode. I told Jane Marriott just now, 20 years ago when I started in politics, I was terrified of speaking. Now you can see the situation. Very hard to tear me away from the mic, but I'm going to just quickly mention what we feel can be done here, and I think if we are able to collaborate on just this one data point, where women feel empowered enough to report the crime against them, whether it's domestic violence or whether it's rape, or very often it's both, because it's by domestic violence all over the world as an aggregate perpetrated by an intimate partner or a member of the family. Here it's often brothers and fathers who name and feel at women making a choice. But this is happening all over the world in different shapes, degrees, and forms. So we need to really do that stock take and use convenings like this as a call to action, as an opportunity to see where we can, at our own level, fix what, GOTV is doing it, the media is doing it, we are doing our bit. We still need communities and partners to make sure this is happening, to be vigilant. at the community level to make sure a woman gets the support she deserves and so badly needs at that level. And lastly, I just want to say that, I mentioned mortality rates, which is linked to women marrying at the right age also, and that law has gone through, but it needs work in many of the provinces that still think women marrying at 16 is okay. It's not, or 14. It really isn't, because even at 18, you're not able to make the health choices you need to, the nutrition enablement that should empower you or your children, or even wield a minimum of decision-making power in the home. Because the home is where the first battle for power begins. And I don't see why we're embarrassed about seeking that power. Power is the essential ingredient that women are discouraged from seeking or speaking about. Oh, you're a pushy woman. I mean, you're not graceful enough. You're pushy. When my male colleague is articulating the need for amassing vast amounts of power, he's considered a leader. I'm pushy. Well, so be it. Give it the label you want. But we will soldier on, women, girls, and those who want to call themselves ladies, most welcome. But I would seek the male partners in this enterprise, because that's what society is about. Wherever we have had male friends and collaborators, change is faster and it is less difficult to reverse, because that is something women face all over the world, whether we are making the laws or becoming the targets of badly made laws or their implementation. So I think I've run over my time. Sidra has not said a word. I'm wondering what kind of moderator you are, my dear. Because, I honestly always say age before beauty, and so I take my privilege from that count, but I think beauty's got to say, I'm sure beauty's running out of time here, and I'm going to cede space and say, well, I hope there's lots to talk about, but there are better people than me on the panel, or at least smarter, who can bring other parts of their journey and other stories to shape our argument today, because it's always an argument, whether you like it or not. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks to you, Senator Sherry, and 3 cheers for the pushy women. Hip hip, hooray! Hip hip, hooray! Ladies and gentlemen, truly, what Senator Sherry has underlined for us is that feminization of poverty and of violence is not random. It is shaped by our choices, by the systems and priorities. And therefore, we need diplomacy if we want to change the values and transform them into our policy, and that policy into protection. Our next speaker once again reminds us that women in diplomacy change the world not by force, but by presence.
Let's see if this works. Yes, that works. Brilliant. Thank you. I get a lot of my energy, particularly after lunch, by moving around a bit. So forgive me if I move around a bit here. Now, there are very few certainties left in this world, but I can tell you that one of them is following Senator Rehman is a really difficult task, because she is, without a doubt, one of our favourite, pushy, controversial people in the world. So let's give her another round of applause. And in private, I will call you my friend Sherry, but for this, your point is well made, Senator. Thank you. So I set 4 themes out, but 2 of them are relevant today to the British High Commission at the start of 2026. And I said, 2026 is the year of uncertainty. Now, I fear that this will not be exclusive to 2026. 2025 felt pretty uncertain. 2027 may feel that as well. But I think this is the year where we really need to adapt to uncertainty, where we understand that the only thing that is certain is uncertainty. The second theme I set to my High Commission is the year of the narrative, because I feel that there are so many people out there, including in my wonderful team, who do fantastic work,
but we're not as good as we need to be at telling people about it. And I don't mean showing off, although sometimes that is necessary. What I mean is setting out the story. And so my remit today is women, the globe, and institutions. And dear me, I've only got 5 minutes, so there's a lot to pack in there. But I wanted to start that theme of sort of the globe and institutions and women by taking it back to a narrative, by zooming out. And I want to zoom out 2,600 years ago, and there's nobody in this room who was around then, that's for certain. I'm going to take us back to ancient Greece. Now, the Greeks, of course, tell us that they invented democracy. I have a feeling there were some cavemen and women sat around several tens of thousands of years before that who were having some sort of discussion about where they were going to shoot a mammoth or kill a mammoth. But I'm going to take us to the home of democracy, Greece, 6,000th century BC. And we all know that Greece invented democracy because it meant everybody could vote. Except, of course, it didn't mean everybody could vote. You could only vote if you were a man. But not just all men. You had to be a citizen. Not only did you have to be a citizen, you had to be free. So basically, if you were a woman, you couldn't vote. If you were a slave, you couldn't vote. And if you were a foreigner, you couldn't vote. So about 30% of the population of ancient Athens could actually vote. So, that's not good. And fast forward 2,400 years, my math isn't great, 2,300, and we're talking 1700s America here. The only people who could vote were white property holders. That's the 1700s, that's like 300 years ago. You could only vote in America if you were white and you owned property, certain types of property. It took until the 1920 itself, before women got the vote in America. Although, of course, New Zealand was the first country in the world in 1893. That's not that long ago, people. Your great-grandparents were around in 1893 when women first got the vote in New Zealand. And then going back to America for a minute, 1965 was when the most overt barriers to on sort of racial and economic grounds were lifted so that a wider section of society could vote. And closer to home, the British Foreign Office, my employer, until 1973, if you got married, you had to resign. Right, not even having children, not that that's a good bar. 1973, that's only a little bit before I was born. And in the late 1990s in the British Foreign Office, if you were pregnant, it was treated like an illness. A bubble was wrapped around you, usually the wife of the diplomat rather than the diplomat themselves, and you were whizzed back to London because you couldn't possibly have birth somewhere overseas. So why do I make these points? I make these points because sometimes it's a bit difficult to get up in the morning and go, there's a lot happening in the world, what difference can I make? But the reason why I set this historical context is actually the progress we have made collectively in the last 50 years is absolutely phenomenal. Now, Senator Rehman name-checked one of these, but first of all, I'm going to take us back to nearly 1979. Now, I know for some of you in the room, 1979 is ancient history. I was 3, so I like to think it was very modern. And what happened in 1979 was something called Sidra, which was the Convention of the Rights of Women. It was called the Women's Bill of Rights at the time, ratified now by 189 countries to incorporate gender equality into domestic laws. It then took until 1995. Senator Rahman was mentioned. She was in Beijing, along with the likes of then Senator Hillary Clinton, for the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action.
It set out, as the Senator said, a blueprint for women's empowerment in 12 critical areas, including education and including health. And it also set out laws against domestic violence. In 1995, guess how many countries
thought that domestic violence was illegal? How many? Give me a number. 12. Oh, this mic's still on. Okay. But that means, can you hear me on this one? I'm back on this one. Yes.
That's good, I think we stuck behind something. So guess how many countries in 1995 thought there should be laws against domestic violence?
12. Thank you. Someone who knows the answer there. 150 countries today have laws against domestic violence. That's still a good 40 plus to go, but a real step forward. Now, My third of four examples is going to take us forward to the year 2000, UN Security Council Resolution 1325. The UN recognised that war impacts women differently. I mean, come on, some of this stuff is so obvious, but it still had to be spelled out, and that women play a key role in peace building. We fast forward to 2015. Senator Rehman mentioned this as well. Sustainable Development Goal number 5, which set out measurable targets for ending child marriage, ensuring equal pay, access, and family planning. These are fine, these are good. But as the Senator said, it's also about implementation. It's patchy, it's rolled back in some countries, it hasn't even rolled out in other countries. And we now have a new set of challenges around tech. There's sort of the recent debates about Grok being able to undress people, which always seem to be women, online. But we have cyber stalking and all sorts of online hate to grapple with as well, not exclusive to women, but disproportionately impacting women. Naming something, I think, though, is the first step to changing it. So naming it, having the data, articulating it, is the first step that is vital. The second is the legislation, is setting something out in law. And then the third step, which is the one we all know that is most difficult, is around implementation. And to help these, we need rules, we need accountability architecture, and data really matters, the truth matters, data matters, more so now than it has ever done before. And the importance of designing intersectionality into all of our systems, whether that's designing a building, designing a bus route, designing how you hold meetings within the office. The intersectionality, not just women and men, but all aspects of intersectionality need to be designed into our systems from the beginning. So, in summary, globally, we've come a really long way in the last 50 years in particular. Progress is not linear. Progress has to be fought for again and again. I think some countries in the West, we took that progress for granted. Now we realise that we're having to fight for it. In Pakistan, I think you're still fighting for many of those things in the first place. But progress is not linear. And recognising that means it's also okay when it takes us a step backwards, because you just have to galvanise yourself to take 2 steps forward. So fighting, not with each other, and I think this has been one of the recent challenges, where we've turned micro debates on ourselves rather than looking at the big global trends that we need to worry about. So access to basic rights, family planning, abortion, things like this, they are all receding. We need to keep fighting them, and not each other. We need to be focused. I had a brilliant history teacher called Mr. Mendham, and he used to talk to us about the Chartists, which was a British social movement in the 19th century. And the Chartists had 6 aims, one of which was one man, one vote. Don't get excited, ladies, we still weren't included. One man, one vote, and then 5 other really detailed ones, like equal electoral districts, and MPs should be paid. These were all very important, but not even the Chartists themselves could remember all 6 of their demands on a daily basis. So keeping focused, prioritise, whether that's something you personally can do in your life to make the world feel that bit less scary, that bit less anxious, or whether it's what you're doing as a group. But where we are focused and where we are fighting is where we are the strongest. And never, ever give up. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, High Commissioner, for once again delivering a power-packed conversation, a speech that basically outlines how recent some of the things that we take granted have been, how the world has changed in our advantage, but only very recently, which kind of also explains why exercising our power, being able to say out our truth is so new for a lot of us. But practice makes perfect, so I hope this becomes your reason to speak out and to be able to contribute to your stories. A lot of history has been recorded by men, where they have been sort of glorified as the heroes, and therefore our next speaker urges everyone, especially women, to be able to tell the story of humanity. This has been her TEDx talk that has over 1 million views, and of course she's also the founder of the WOW festivals around the world, which gives numerous women, hundreds and thousands of women around the world, to actually come out, say their truth, and be given the platform where they can imagine more and dream for more. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming someone, of course, we have a lot of regard for, and she is the person who's initiated this brilliance around the world. Why it matters to us, I want to once again reiterate, is also to draw your attention towards the theme this year. It's been 10 years of the WOW Festival in Pakistan, and this year it's called Dastak. I find it particularly very, very interesting because Dastak, yes, it has that pun intended to Das, which is the 10 complete years, a decade of WOW in Pakistan, but also the fact that it's a knock. It's a powerful knock that reminds you that there is so much more that you can do. And I know this one will continue knocking at your conscience, at the policymakers' doors, to make room for more. Please join me in welcoming with the thunderous applause, Jude Kelly, CBE, the founder of WOW Festivals.
Thank you so much. And thank you to the two speakers who've just gone, Sherry and Jane, for talking about optimism, demonstrating that actually it might feel slow, it's certainly not linear, but bit by bit by bit, we actually have the evidence that if you speak about human rights for women, for girls, and if you do it collectively, if you do it globally, if we share our experience instead of being silenced, then change does come. I think it's very important that those of you who perhaps don't know the stats realize that, yes, in the UK, we have these levels of violence. Yes, in the UK, we have falling healthcare, particularly around maternity and mortality. It's not that you can single out any one nation and say they've solved it and they haven't. Actually, it goes around in circles. While girls and women are never perceived to be equal yet, then every single country can dip and dive, ebb and flow, depending on its economic situation and its political colour. And women will always, therefore, have a different diet of rights because it can't be consistent. But this conversation was called foundational, and in a way I want to turn it back to you. You know, I'm a small English white person from the UK. That's a country I know about. You are the experts in Pakistan, and that is why WOW is so honoured that the women of Pakistan decided that they would find the WOW Festival useful for your conversations, useful for your battles, useful for your consideration. WOW is not a conference and it's not a symposium. You know, we're not doing Beijing. We're not doing those great meeting places where wonderful NGOs and politicians come together to talk about policy, to change policy and change laws. What we are trying to do is tell you all over the world that you individually are carrying stories that really matter. And I would just like you to think about that for a minute, because when you're on a panel like this, you can look illustrious. You can look like you have been and always have been a leader. But that's not true. You know, once upon a time you were a 5-year-old, not knowing what you were going to do. And so many women in leadership actually carry the traumas and the setbacks and the obstacles and the pain of all of that into their leadership, but feel prepared to speak about it. So I want to ask you, both as women and as men, because there are quite a lot of men in the audience, even though lots of them are on the cameras, that actually to say, what are the things that you perhaps haven't spoken about in your own life that you feel you could be more honest about? Because I think the key thing about WOW is we're trying to tell the stories that we have been silenced about in the past. But not just painful stories. We also want to tell stories of triumph and happiness and joy and optimism. Women are encouraged to be deferential. We're encouraged to be modest. We're encouraged to have humility. They're all very lovely things. But actually there's nothing wrong with shouting about your talents from the rooftops and claiming it too. So I want you all to consider whether you think you have a strong enough relationship to money. Do you think you deserve money? Are you getting enough money? Do you think that you are paid properly? Do you negotiate well? Do you think you are given what you are appropriately deserving of? Because women traditionally have been told not to think about themselves as a strong economic force. And that is just one way of remaining powerless. With regard to health, are you aware of parts of your health that maybe you feel nervous about, shy about, not included in? In which case, is that a story you can tell other women, or do you keep shy about these things? WOW is very, very important from the point of view of sharing story. I, for example, had a miscarriage. My first child was a miscarriage. I had no idea when I was having the miscarriage that 1 in 4 women have miscarriages. I didn't know that. And so I didn't tell anybody because I was too ashamed. Why was I ashamed at having a miscarriage? That is a mystery to me. But in a way, that was my culture, to be silent about these things. What about things to do with sex and sexual pleasure? Do women feel they can discuss that with each other? Somebody is shaking their head and going, zip. And what is it about that? Are we not, as Sherry says, allowed to have pleasure and our own bodies? WOW is a place that we should be able to talk and celebrate. What is about sport? Who does sport here? Which women do sport? Okay, is that a big thing in Pakistan for women? Are you allowed to go out, show off your body, get strength? No? Shaking heads again. Why not? Aren't we born with exactly the same potential? Isn't that part of our human rights? Everything that we could possibly be and do. So all of you individually, it isn't really just about looking at a platform and hearing what policies might be happening. It's about recognizing your lived experience really matter. And how do you tell each other as girls and women? How do you share those lived experiences? Because when Sherry goes to a conference to fight for a right, or goes into Parliament to fight for a right, you know, the only thing that will be the evidence that it must happen will be women's stories on the ground. And so we started WOW all these years ago, really, to say that unless girls and women and boys and men all agree that change has to happen and can name the things that where the change needs to be, actually you can't get that forward as a human right. So we're really trying to build optimism and stamina in festivals. You're celebrating the 10th anniversary in Pakistan now. We've just celebrated in Turkey. We're celebrating in Brazil. We're celebrating in America, Australia, in so many places around the world. And I can absolutely tell you that the stories are the same everywhere on one level, but on another level, the very, very specific things that you know in Pakistan will support a woman in Istanbul when she is trying to fight for her rights. To the men in the room, I hope that you're not just videoing this or photographing it. I hope you're also thinking about your daughters and your sisters. And I hope when you think about women's human rights, you don't think that it's some kind of race where women get to the same point as you do and you say, well, that's fine, well done for getting here. I hope you realize that when we're fighting for equal rights, it means that the whole world will need to recalibrate. We have to adjust and change to what gender equity looks like. It isn't about women catching up with men. It's about considering how our shared life experiences will be different through equality. And that's sophisticated, it's complex, and it'll take a lot of discussion. I can assure you men that if you leave it to women just to talk about on their own, there will come a point as men when you will think, I'm not sure what's going on. How did they get so far? And where am I? Because in the end, this is about women changing our sense of identity. We have to change who we are, who we think we can be, who we are entitled to be. And when we turn to a man we love and say, I love you, but actually I am not going to do all the emotional labor, I am not going to do all the domestic labor, I might earn more than you, and that is not a matter of shame for you, and I do want parliamentary equality, it might be that as a man you feel that's a strange experience, something that counteracts your sense of what men are. Well, women have gone through huge transition thinking about what women are and can be. And sometimes that's been very painful and complex and still is. You're going to have to do that work, men. But I'm assuming you're sitting here because you're up for it. Don't do it on behalf of the women. Do it because you as men want to grow your consciousness, your change. So yes, we have women of the world all around the world. But we're also launching BAM, Boys and Men this year in Brazil. And it's an opportunity for you to get involved in that too. On a final note and sheer publicity, please join WOW. You can all be members. We're launching, there's a table in the market, WOW 365. It's a global digital events membership. It means you can have conversations with yourselves, with other women around the world, every day of the year. Please join, be part of the WOW movement. It's been such a wonderful experience for me to learn from Pakistani women all the way through these 10 years. Cherie is a complete inspiration for me. I think she's been an amazing leader. I don't know which ones of you are going to turn into parliamentarians. Some of you will, I'm sure. But you'll turn into lots of other things. And we'll be here in 10 years' time, I think, for the next WOW knocking on the door. And thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Jude, for that confidence and that connection. It really goes a long way when you remind us of our true potential. And of course, through these platforms, you allow people to once again reconnect to what their most authentic version is. We all strive for excellence, we all strive for progress, but sometimes one of the greatest costs we pay for that is we slowly and gradually we start performing and we disconnect from our authentic self. So thank you for bringing us back to it. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is someone who takes a lot of pride in being an activist, a feminist. She's, of course, an internationally acclaimed journalist. She is also a council member of the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan and the former resident director of the Aurat Foundation. She builds wonderful years of work into urging us to think better, be better. Please join me in welcoming Mahnaz Rahman.
First of all, I would like to congratulate the founder and organizers of WOW Festival. And the theme is also very interesting, Dastak, knock, knock, knock. And I hope we will keep on knocking the doors that are still closed to women. I really get confused when I have to speak about women in the sense that I can't give a sweeping statement about women because there are different classes and there is a lot of different issues that different classes are facing. And I make it a point to remind people that we are not living in a classless society. Pakistan's women do not live one story, but they live under the same structure. An educated woman in Lahore and a woman working in the fields of Sindh may live vastly different lives, but they are negotiating patriarchy. Both negotiate patriarchy, state neglect, economic precarity, and moral surveillance. Because we have seen that how state decides how we dress, we should cover our head or not. These are the things that we have faced during the dictatorships, and these still continue because of the religious extremism. These are the points that we should mention, that class differences, then dictatorship, and then this religious extremism, these things have made our life miserable, but still there are women like Sherry, women like Sidra, that they have proved that they can prove their talents and they can achieve some status in this male-dominant society. But on the whole, there is a long distance that the women have to cover. There are different forms like control over our mobility and choices. Urban middle class women, they face different issues that we should keep in mind. Like we get in urban society or in urban cities, I mean, we get the chance to get education, but we don't get the chance of autonomy to decide about our future. Marriage is a sailing, not a choice that we should understand. And if we think about rural women, physical immobility, work without recognition are the main points. Marriage as survival, not aspiration. Because we have seen during these climate change and disasters, when floods come, last time we saw that the rate of child marriage increased when the people were staying in the camps, because the parents thought that their girls, though they were less than 18 years, and there is a law, but laws are there, but they are not being implemented. That's our problem. So their parents got their young girls married just because of climate change or disasters, natural disasters that followed. As far as education is concerned, as I said, urban women, education, for them education is not equal to autonomy. Rural women education still, they have to fight for it, and that's the right that is usually interrupted, like if she has to take care of her young brothers and sisters, she has to leave her education. If some natural disaster comes, she has to leave her education. So Pakistan has created educated women without power and working women without rights. As far as economic participation is concerned, is also without authority. Urban women earn but do not control income. Majority, I'm talking about majority of the women. Rural women labor endlessly but are invisible in the economy. This exposes the myth that empowerment is equal to employment. It is not. Because when we were studying in university, we were told that if we will get employment after our education, we will get the same status as the men get. But when we came into the field and we started doing jobs, we still found that men of the house, men of the society were taking decisions for us, and they didn't allow us majority of the women what they wanted to do. So successes worth naming are urban middle class women normalizing descent in families, because now in families, educated women, they do dissent about what the patriarch of the family want. So expanding feminist discourse, we see that the feminist discourse has been expanded, especially in urban areas, and women do pressurize institutions to create opportunities for women. They raise voices. They said that we have to be pushy if we want to get our rights. And that reminds me, Sherry had once mentioned her problem that there is a club in Karachi that don't give membership to women, even if she is of the status of Sherry Rahman, she doesn't get the membership of that club. So you can imagine what ordinary woman will be treated like. So rural women's for survival is as resistance. Informal leadership, like in health, agricultural community, we see that women do play the role of leaders. And in rural areas, women are organizing quietly, often without NGO language. Rural women have always been feminist without calling it feminism. The tensions we must acknowledge are, number one, urban feminism often speaks for, not with rural women. We speak for them, but not with them. Rural women are used as symbols of suffering, not agents of change. Other problems are English medium and Urdu medium. Funding and visibility create a hierarchy among women. This I have seen, I mean, when we talk about class, we can also see that children, not only women, boys and girls, both from English medium schools, they get more chances than the children who come from government schools, Urdu medium schools, which we call Pile school, yellow school. So there are a lot of problems with regard to class as well. So what has gone wrong? Movements fragmented along class lines. There were many movements, but they are fragmented along class lines. NGOs professionalized feminism. Rural struggles became projects, not politics. Actually, in our student life, we used to believe that we will bring change through politics. But when dictatorship came, especially the Ziaul dictatorship, then he just put ban on politics in a way. And so what we wanted to do became projects, not politics. And that was our bad luck, I should say. Middle class women are taught to escape patriarchy, not dismantle it. We just try to escape, we don't try to dismantle patriarchy. So what can be done differently? Feminism rooted in listening, not saying. Urban women using access to amplify, not replace rural women, rural voices. We should amplify them. We can't replace them. The rural women should raise their own voices and we should amplify them. Policy conversations grounded in lived realities. It's must. Reclaiming solidarity across class as political work. We should understand that we can bring change through politics. Pakistan's women will not be liberated by one class rising alone. One class gets some opportunity is not the solution. Women of every class should get opportunities. Freedom, like injustice, is shared. Freedom have to be shared, like as injustice is for some and for some, not some. So what I wanted to say, according to my experience, because I'm 77 years old now, and I have spent my life for raising voice for women, for marginalized people, for vulnerable people. So that's why I like the platforms like WOW, because unless and until all the women of the world get together and raise voices for their rights, some small sections won't make a larger change. Like in Pakistan, there are many, good examples. We had the first woman prime minister, we had the first woman speaker. There are many examples, but what about the majority? What about the women of poor class? So we have to think about every class, and we have to finish these injustices which are being taken place because of class system. So when we talk about gender, we should not forget the class, because different classes have different issues and different problems, and they all should be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for that, Mahnaz ji, and this brilliant panel, once again reiterating what Arundhati Roy put it best. She said, there's really no such thing as the voiceless. There are those who are deliberately silenced or preferably unheard. So ladies and gentlemen, let us find our voice, and before we wind up this wonderful panel, where each of our speakers left you with a lot to think about, with their insights and their experience, I just have one two-part question that I would like to address to my panel and maybe get some responses from them. First and foremost, if I may ask you, what is that one thing about women and power that we are still very scared to say out loud. It's a hard truth that we don't even speak out in the most progressive of spaces, in your opinion. And the second part to that would be, do you really believe the institutions that you all have been a part of, do they really change and evolve, or they just absorb women without ever redistributing power? So that would be my two-part questions for each one of you, please.
Right, I don't think there's any silver bullet or one thing, because so many things remain unsaid and really locked behind closed doors. It hasn't happened with me, but if it had, I would say it out loud. My husband or my partner has been not fair with me, and these things go to courts, but they are kept behind locked doors. But in Pakistan, I found the most difficult thing that people found, they found it an obstacle in conversations, was at the bottom of the social pyramid, women asking and seeking for birth control. So at a big population conference the other day, we were talking about the C word, which is contraception. Pakistan doesn't make most of the contraceptives, so we do need to import them, and when we import them, there's a tax on them. That needs to go. And so it's very off the charts. You won't hear about it. I'm not embarrassed by anything, so I'm struggling to find anything, because I think women's issues are men's issues, are human rights, and they need to be aired everywhere. And so there we are. Yeah. Oh, do institutions change? Yes and no, because you need to make them change. They don't change on their own. There are some progressive men who bring an agenda of change with them, and I can name a few in my working life, which is, and you'll say, other than my own family, which is forced to be that way. For instance, somebody mentioned the club, Sindh Club, okay? Sindh Club and Punjab Club. I'm not sure about Punjab Club. This is completely, it is atrocious to be hearing this. But I'm not seeking to be part of this club. Let me be very clear. My father's been a member. All my husbands have been members, including this one, permanent members. I don't let them go. I said, you can't be going to a club, even for a lunch or a wedding or anything. Because while I can be a member, I have been when I was single, the point is, I was sold a lie that, oh, no, you women will be voting or full members. I don't want to be waiting in line to be, it's nonsense to be waiting to be made a full member in an elite club which claims it's a gentleman's club, because it's not. It's on public land. And it's an entire family run, and its revenues are mostly generated by women and children using the facilities, what is known as a gymkhana model, a very colonial model. And you don't see these large clubs in Britain anymore, which is how they originated. When my lawyer called the British originating club, she was appalled at the other end of the phone line. She said, absolutely not. How could we do that anymore? So institutions don't change. They'll be forced to change. But say, in politics, you have men who insist on women's rights, such as, and I say this with conviction, Bilawal Bhutto. I say this with conviction about President Zardari, because when the Benazir Income Support Program, for instance, was being forced through cabinet, because I say forced through because the civil service was rejecting it, as finding it difficult, women will find it difficult, at the bottom of the social poor, women will find it difficult to access it. We said no, their families will be forced to make an ID card for them, because it's money for the family then, not just disposable income in her hand. But she becomes a community person then, someone powerful in the food chain. No, this can't happen. I went to the other room, I phoned him, and I said, well, I'm the only woman in the room, and I'm the only one. They are forcing this to happen without the women being recipients. The income support program called Benazir Income Support will not go to women the way it's, and there are only 5 ministers in the room, and we're resisting, but we're being outnumbered. He said, tell them it has to go through women. Then that was forced through, and Prime Minister Girani did the same. And you know, the first woman to make a cash withdrawal from the post office, it was post office these days, it's the smart wallet, which doesn't need you to be literate, was a woman from Kurram Agency. And it was hard for her to even reach the post office, but that was the first withdrawal, and we threw it right back to our friendly civil servants. So you have men champions, but that's because they're politically committed to it. Doesn't mean that's down the line or institutionally. All women, I feel, everywhere, like the suffragettes in Britain, who were force-fed and imprisoned to just get the right to vote. I believe it was 1929 or something, yeah, far away as that. But everywhere we've had to keep on taking power with a lot of effort. It's not like the institutions change, and very often they seek reversal, as High Commissioner Jane Marriott just said. It's never linear. I think everyone has said that. It's never linear. But even in the home, you have to keep on asking it. Power or permissions don't come on a silver or plastic tray. Thank you.
No, she'll need that. Thank you. In the interest of time, I'm just going to do the institutions one, because I do think that institutions do and can change. If one woman is in a room of men, there is a house style, and in order to be heard, that woman ends up taking on the characteristics of a man. I know I've spent a lot of my life, as I'm sure many of you have, being the only woman in the room. And then you get two women in the room, and that can sometimes be a bit dangerous, because sometimes they're seen as rivals and competition. Now, if they can work together to overcome that, that's fantastic. That's my default style. It's not every woman's default style. If there's three of you, so you start to get heard a little bit more. When you're at 30% in the room, the statistics show that men think women are in the majority, when you're actually still only at 30% in the room. And if you ever reach a space where you're 50%, then you're having a genuinely equal conversation, and you can start to change the institution. My boss once said to me, Jane, you need to show more gravitas. And I said to him, could you explain gravitas to me in a way that isn't a white male public school sort of way, which is what he was? And he just looked at me and had no idea what I was talking about. And I said, look, I'm willing to change. I'm willing to change, but the institution's going to have to meet me halfway. And actually, this isn't just a male-female conversation, because I know lots of good men who will sit in that room, and actually they don't like that dominating style of the person who shouts up the most gets to hear it. And some women, like me, are fine with it. So actually, a style that means that introverted man can participate as fully as an extrovert woman or an introvert woman is as equally important. That's why, for me, things like WOW are about making everybody's lives better. They should not be a threat to anybody. They're about helping all of us. And yes, institutions can change, but they need a helping push sometimes, which is what this is about, Das Tak.
Absolutely. The wow punch has to be there. Thank you for that. Jude.
Well, I think two things. You asked why women find power, or the word power, very difficult. And I think the answer is we've been groomed to feel that power equals being, for a woman, arrogant, ambitious, which is a word that's used against us, unpleasant. I think we're frightened of being disliked, and women are groomed to feel they must be nice. But I think we have to get over that, and we have to groom ourselves out of it and feel that we need power, not just for ourselves, but for each other. And we won't be liked for it in certain contexts. We won't necessarily be liked by other women. But I think we have to have it, because we need to trust that we will use our power well for other people. And certainly if you get into a position of power and you do use it to open doors for other people, you can make a big difference. And with regard to institutions, I think Jane's absolutely right. You can change an institution to a degree by the number of people who are fighting on the same side for something and prepared to sort of share a different way of doing things. But there's no doubt about it, that if an institution has been founded on a particular way of doing something, it springs back to that very quickly. So my advice, wherever possible, is found your own thing. Start your own thing. Be the leader of the thing you want to change. I think that really will make a difference. And because I think parliaments are very much about, being founded on men's time and men's style and men's adversarial qualities, I'm not sure that we don't need to create a different kind of sense of parliament So it isn't just enough to found new political parties. I think sometimes we need to think about founding different kinds of parliaments that are built around everybody together. Just a thought.
I think I love that thought. It is also about freeing yourself from external validation. Be the person you like the most. Mahnaz ji, your final comments.
The question is not only of power but justice. I think we should keep on trying to achieve gender equity, because I don't believe in blind equality that men are doing this thing so we should also do that. No, we are different and we are inferior. Actually, because of our reproductive things, I think women are superior to men. We are not inferior, we are superior to them, but there is a lot of injustice, and so we should fight for our reproductive rights, our other rights, and we should admit about our sexuality and other desires, because we should talk about these things. These are not some taboo subjects anymore. So we should try to get gender equity in the society, and about equality we will talk when we eliminate patriarchy and gender discrimination.
Thank you so much, Mahnaz ji. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for my panel. We know that we have exceeded time, but what a powerhouse this foundational leadership conversation was. May I request my entire panel to please come together for a group photograph before we depart.